Movement presents The Honest Pod with Karrie Garcia. Join us for honest conversations at the intersection of theology, neuroscience, and story engagement. Whether you're a coach, ministry leader, parent, or someone simply longing to love people more intentionally, we welcome you to the table. This is your invitation to greater honesty, healing, and a journey with God to reclaim your story and live free and fully alive in His love. Let's dive into today's episode.
All right, welcome back to The Honest Pod. To all my 11 listeners, I hope you're having a great day today. And if not, that's okay too, because sometimes days just aren't good. Am I right? And I'm just proud of you for taking a second to listen to something that is going to help you, hopefully. And if this doesn't help you, then at least you took a few minutes to care for yourself. And that alone is great. I think when I think of podcasts, I think we go to podcasts to gather information to help us like heal or get some information or whatever. And I wonder how many podcasts, I don't know, this is just rhetorically asking because clearly we're not having a back and forth conversation, but how fun would that be? How many of us listen to podcasts and then take in the information and do nothing with it? I don't know, because I've listened to a lot of podcasts and I don't want that. I don't want this to be. I was thinking about it in from last week's message or podcast to this week's. Like, I'm just like, I don't want this to be a place where you come to just devour and consume information, although I am going to give you some information. And I think the tendency is when we're talking today, we're going to talk some neuroscience-y stuff around what's happening in your brain and what happens in your brain when trauma happens. But I want this to be, so I've kind of thought about this. Like, I want this to be a place where I'm not going to say it's like a Bible study, but where there can be reflection at the end. Can I give you homework? Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. I want to give you homework. I want to give you something to work on this week. Nothing hard, guys. Okay. Don't work too hard. Y'all are just working so hard. And God's just like, hey, do you want to just come like frolic in a field? But all that to say is I want to end this podcast today with some reflective questions so that you are not just consuming information, but that you're actually ingesting it and embodying it and thinking about it, because I want you to heal. God wants you to heal. And we just do not heal by ingesting a bunch of information. I'm going to keep telling you that. We heal through getting honest with ourselves, honest with God, and honest with others. Boom, period. And really connecting to the earth. We really do need to do that. And I know some of you are going to be like, oh no, I knew it. She's woo-woo. She's out there. She's probably hugging trees. I am hugging trees. The earth that God made, hear me clearly, the earth that God made is stunning and it brings healing to us. It does. It's why He created it. He created it for us to delight in it. And there is so much science out there that if you get outside in nature, what happens to your serotonin levels, what happens to your dopamine levels, what happens to your cortisol levels. I mean, there's a lot of science out there that shows us that when we're in nature. Anyway, I digress. That's not even what this whole podcast is about. But I want you to hear, I am going to invite you into connection to self, connection to God, connection to others, and connection to the earth. I'm going to do that through the way of story, mostly, because that is where kind of my expertise lies. But God has so much more for you than just engaging your story. He wants you to be an embodied human. He wants you to engage in all of your senses. And He wants you to live free, yes, but He wants you to live fully alive. Okay? And we're going to talk a little about that today. So reflection is going to be really important. And again, you don't have to reflect. You don't have to do the homework. I mean, I love you. You're welcomed here, even if you don't do the homework. But I just don't want this. This was when I wrote my book as well. Like at the end of every chapter, I wrote a book called Free and Fully Alive. I'll put it in the show notes if you want to go check it out. It's a really great way. I mean, obviously, I think it's a great way because I wrote it, but Karrie, you wrote it. So of course you like it. But I wrote the chapters really short because I don't want you just consuming information. And there's a natural pause when a chapter comes to an end. And at the end of every chapter, there's a prayer. And I put that in there because information without intimacy won't bring transformation. So that's what I want for the podcast. That's what I want for the book. That's what we do in our trainings at Freedom Movement. That's why so much of our trainings are in person. We do some that are online, but some are in person because of the very reason of we want you to embody healing. And just healing just doesn't happen when you're in your head. Just doesn't. So I want to talk a little bit about that today. Okay, here's what I'm titling this, and I don't even know if this title really works because I'm not really good with titles, to be honest with you. But I thought about what I want to talk about today is really like when the map is missing. And I want to talk about how trauma disrupts the journey that you're on and how story work begins to help that journey. Now, it's not the end all be all, but it is definitely helpful to rewiring and remapping your life. So, have you ever found yourself like stuck? You want to make a change, you want to move forward, but no matter how hard you try, like you just can't figure out your next step. It's like you're standing at a crossroads, but there's no map, there's no signposts, and there's no idea which way is home, which way I'm supposed to go. But there's something inside you that has brought you to this crossroads. You've gotten this far, but you know that if I go this way, something's going to happen. If I go this way, something's going to happen. And you long to make the right choice or the choice that is going to lead you towards hope, healing, your calling, the abundant life that God talks about in the scriptures. And yet there's this terror that comes in that if I keep going down this path, it's going to lead to more of what I've been experiencing. I just don't know which path to take, which one is going to lead to destruction, which one's going to lead to abundance. And I feel like really stuck. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. I was thinking about this in like, do I have a moment in my life where I've been at a crossroads and I really haven't known where to go? I found this really funny for me because I am a person that will always have an answer, even if it's like I will fake it until I make it kind of person. If someone asks me a question, I'm not like this anymore, but I used to be like, well, yeah, I know the answer, even if I didn't know the answer. I remember getting jobs and like getting hired and they would say, do you know how to do this? Or do you know how to do that? And be like, yeah, absolutely. I'm perfect at it. I didn't even know what they were talking about, but I was like, well, I'll research it because I want the job. So I was really having to think pretty hard of, was there a time where I was at a crossroads where there was no sign? I felt stuck and I didn't know what to do. Now, I know what it feels like to feel stuck in anxiety because and we'll talk more about that in this season. But as far as like making a decision, I'll just go. I'll just impulsively go. But there was a time, and this wasn't even too long ago, when this was during COVID 2020, and we had traveled around during 2020 in an RV helping churches in how to engage, the trauma that was happening in their church, because churches were just underwater. They were just like, what do we do? People were freaking out. Pastors were damned if they did, damned if they didn't. They opened their doors, they're damned. They didn't open their doors, they're damned. It was just a nightmare. And what they realized was, oh my gosh, all of these people that have been coming to church forever, all of their coping mechanisms are stripped away. And now they are exposed and really a mess. All of us were. So we traveled around in an RV, me and my family, for a little over a month, going to various states and helping people by doing some trainings. Well, a long story short, we were actually quote unquote homeless at that time because we were transitioning out of our house and we were moving into a new house that we were going to rent. But COVID hit and the in-shelter lockdown happened. So they did not let us move into our house. So we were like on our friend's, couch, staying in their house. Then we got the RV and then we were traveling around. So we were like, oh, that's why God didn't have us go, get a house, because this made way for the opportunity for us to do this RV. So when we were done with the RV, we got back to Orange County and we thought, okay, this is it. This is great. we're now going to get a house because we did what God wanted us to do. And now it's going to happen. 2 weeks go by. We can't afford anything. People were showing us stuff, but like prices have exponentially raised. We can't find a house. We are still quote unquote homeless, staying on friends' couches, house sitting for houses, staying in my in-laws, going from house to house. And it was like, how long was it? I mean, what was that, April or something that 2020 happened, or the lockdown happened? We did not know what we were going to do. And this was already the end or the middle of July. So it had been months of us not having a place to live, our stuff in storage. And I remember Mario and I, and this is what came to my mind, is that Mario and I looked at each other and we literally were like, we don't know what to do. There is no signposts. We feel stuck. Everywhere we turn our head, nothing is opening up. There is no avenue. There is no signpost. There is no direction. It was like God was radio silent. And we just got done serving him. So we were, what the heck, like, why aren't you giving us a house? I mean, this just feels purposeful. It just feels, we're supposed to have a house is what it feels like. And I remember just thinking, we do not know what to do. We are stuck. We can't keep living in someone's house. We need a house of our own. And we just felt no matter how much we were trying to solve the problem, we couldn't solve it. We went away and we prayed for 24 hours. And Mario went away, like we were at the beach. He went, a few yards away. I couldn't see him. And I went by myself, prayed. And we both spent a couple hours praying alone. And then we came back together and the Lord spoke to me and said, you are going to move to Illinois. And when Mario came back but I wrote on the bottom, you're going to move to Illinois, which was wild. I didn't even know where Illinois was on the map. I'm going to be honest with you. We had done a training in Illinois and then we left. It was just, I knew the person that was running the church, but no intention of moving to Illinois, not even remotely on our radar. But it said at the bottom, I wrote down at the bottom of my paper, you're going to move to Illinois, which I started crying and was like, I'm pretty sure I'm hearing this wrong. And then I felt like God pressed upon me, but I need to deal with Mario. Oh boy. So Mario comes back and I'm thinking he's going to have this amazing encounter that God is going to tell him we're not moving to Illinois and I totally got it wrong. Or he's going to get the same thing that I got, which was going to be a whole ordeal. Mario comes back, hours of praying. I go, what did you get? And he's like, nothing. Nothing. No signposts. We're at the crossroads, no map, nothing. But I saw on his paper, it said on his paper, 5 days of fire. That's all that was written. Hours. That's all that was written. I said, what is that? What's 5 days of fire? And he said, that's all I heard. I said, well, is it like a podcast or something? Like, what is it? He's like, I have no idea. I said, so when you were praying, all you heard was 5 days of fire. He said, yeah. I said, babe, that's not going to be good for you. Because if you know anything about fire in the Bible, it is refining. It is shaping. It is the time where God is going to speak. And I think I'm going to bring Mario on in this season and we'll talk a little bit more about his 5 days of fire because that's his story. And I have shared about this in previous podcasts, but I want you to understand what we're talking about today, that what happens in trauma when our brain can't make a decision and what God needs to begin to reveal, how we lean on him, and what is actually happening in our brains when we feel stuck. Now, a lot of this was spiritual, why we felt stuck, but remember what I told you earlier, I am the girl that knows how to make decisions. I am the girl that no matter what, I will figure it out. I am the figure it out girl. I am the one, my role in my home was the one that I will tend to my father. I will be stronger than my mother and I will save everybody. Okay, that's my story. There's no crossroads. There's always a map. I'll make the map. If God doesn't give us a map, that's fine. I will fashion my own. I will make the signposts. I'm your girl, right? And here we are stuck, and my way of doing things is not working. I mean, my brain cannot function. I am in a trauma response. So I want to talk to you about how healthy brains solve problems, because this is how healthy brains solve problems. And the way that I functioned for all of my life was not actually a healthy brain. It was a trauma response brain. So I want to talk a little bit about the difference of that today. So there's something in science called means ends analysis. Okay, just stay with me. I know that sounds like a little bit heady, but I want to explain what means end analysis. It's kind of like the means to an end, right? You do these things so you can get to where you're wanting to go, your preferred future. It's like problem solving. It's a problem solving means end analysis is a problem solving process. It's where you help identify the current state you're in, the goal you want to get to, and then you break down smaller steps to getting there. And there may be a distance from where you are and where you want to be, but you are able to see that there are steps and you're going to get there. And sometimes you do what's called the work back method. It's a way of starting at the goal that you want to go, and you kind of work back, we reverse to figure out the path. It's like planning a vacation. Right? If I love traveling, I love planning vacations. I think I enjoy planning the vacation maybe more than I like being on the vacation. I love planning it. So you start by imagining where you're going to go, right? I'm going to go to Italy. And then you work backwards, right? You go, I want to go to Italy. So we're going to work backwards. We need to get flights. I need to pack. I need to get someone to watch the dog. You work backwards to get to your goal. That is how a healthy brain operates. It sees the goal, it sees the steps to get there, and usually it will work backwards. It's the working back strategy. Your brain will work backwards to help you see the necessary steps so that you can achieve the goal. This is a healthy brain, and this is what we were made to do. And there are some things that you can do that just fine. No problem, right? I can do that when it comes to, traveling on vacation. So why does trauma make problem solving in your brain so hard? So basically, like, what happens when trauma is involved? What if your brain isn't just thinking about the trip? What if your brain is going, I'm not just thinking about this really fun trip that I want to go on, but it actually begins to scan for danger, and it begins to mistrust the process. And then it just gets too overwhelmed to even pack a suitcase. What happens is in trauma is when you've come up against something, a decision that you want to make, a goal you want to get to, you want to start that business, or you want to, start volunteering at the church, or you really want to have that hard conversation with your son or your spouse or that friend. And it's like, you want to get there, but your brain goes offline because it starts to experience a response that goes, there is so much danger. If you say that, if you do that, danger is going to come to you. And so you start to mistrust yourself. Here's what happens in a brain. Your brain is never knowing the future. All your brain can do is dictate what has happened in the past and overlay it into the present. So when you're in trauma, or when you're having a trauma response, that stuck feeling, you're not actually present in your present. You are replaying something where danger has come in the past, and you're overlaying that into the present, and your brain is going, we can't do that. So in simplistic forms, if you're thinking about traveling and you feel very stuck, you get overwhelmed by the process, chances are there's something in your story that is dictating a dangerous response that says, I am mistrusting myself or the airline or whatever to be able to even think about the steps I need to take. This comes when I take it back to the story of we didn't know what to do and Mario needed to deal with, his situation, the situation of moving. Through those days of 5 days of fire, one of the things that came up was his loyalty and his idolatry to his children. He couldn't see outside of possibilities of where we could go and what we could do. Even when I mentioned, us moving to Illinois, he couldn't imagine it. He couldn't get his mind there because so much of his story is dictating when you do things for yourself. That's how he viewed it. And not put your kids first. Your kids are going to suffer and that's going to bring harm to them. That's his brain. So his brain mistrusts God, mistrusts himself, and he can't see how to get to a goal. There's no options because anything that he does outside of just, get a house in California, which he couldn't do, is going to lead to harm to his children. So what trauma does is it hijacks the process that's needed to make clear decisions. And it does this by impacting your prefrontal cortex. Now, I know this is really sciencey, but this is like foundational, friends, to understanding, because here's a lot of what I hear. I've prayed about what God has for me. I know God wants me to start that business. Let's just say that. Okay. I know God wants me to start that business. But every time I try to step into it, I get flooded with, you're not good enough. You're not going to be able to do it. What are people going to think of you? Did God really say that? And you begin to mistrust the process and you begin to mistrust yourself and God. And did I even really hear right? Okay. So what's happening? Your means end analysis is offline. You are not functioning in the way that your brain is intended to function because something in your story is hijacking your brain. Okay. So it's not that you don't have enough faith. I mean, some of you may need to work on your faith. Okay. But a lot of times it's because there has been something in your story that is hijacking your brain. And hijacking your brain looks like when you've experienced harm in your story, whether big or little, and your brain perceives it as danger and a threat, your nervous system's job is to protect you from danger. It doesn't want to experience it. It will do anything it can to avoid it. And so when you have experienced trauma, your prefrontal cortex, this is where logical sequencing and decision-making live. It lives in the front of your prefrontal cortex. This is where the prefrontal cortex is where logic sequencing, like I can do this and this and this, and your decision-making, it's where it lives. But here's what's fascinating. When we've experienced trauma in certain circumstances, because it doesn't shut off in all circumstances, like you can make decisions about getting in your car and going to the store and buying milk and coming home. There's no trauma there, right? But when you are feeling that stuck feeling, what's happening is there's something in your story that your brain is predicting a past pain, a past harm, a past experiencing, and it's overlaying it into the present. And now you are no longer living in the present. Your prefrontal cortex has gone offline. So the brain defaults to survival responses. This is when your amygdala, where your fight, flight, or freeze lives, and it pops in and it's like, I'm going to save the day. Even though you going to Italy or you starting that business isn't potentially going to bring harm, but your brain and your body, they aren't in the present. They are reenacting a past experience. So there can be no logical steps. So even small t trauma, repeated shame, chronic invalidation, rejection can create deep ruts in the brain. And it's deep ruts in the brain's wiring that disrupt problem solving. So in essence, what I'm trying to say is it's created neurons that are repeating past experiences and you aren't living present. This is fascinating. So means and analysis becomes impossible because you don't know where you're starting from. You're disconnected from your present, and you're pretty, you're really disconnected from your past as well because you don't even know you're living in your past, but you're actually living in your past. And we don't believe, because of these neurons in our brain, we actually don't believe that we deserve a better future, because here's something fascinating. That hope has to live in the brain when the brain is online in the prefrontal cortex, because hope is about strategy. It's about believing that what God says in the future can be present today. But if we're not present in today, hope is shut down. Hope is risky, right? It's asking a lot of us. It's allowing us to go, okay, I'm going to hope for something better. But when we're living in a trauma response, hope is shut down and we're just here to survive. Hope and survival can't live together. They cannot. So we end up not believing that we can have a better future because hope is completely shut down. And we never learn, hear this clearly, we never learn to build bridges from here to there because we're stuck in the past and we can't be in the future or in the present to move towards a different future, a preferred future. It's like our brain goes offline. So as I end this podcast, how does story work help this? Because I really want you to understand I'm setting this up to let you know there's an answer. Yes, I want you to pray. Yes, I want you to read your Bible. Yes, yes, and amen. Please do those things in conjunction with, let's try to help heal your brain and your body by introducing the idea of story work. So story work helps us re-engage a narrative. It reconnects the past to the present, and it helps rebuild a new internal map. In essence, what I'm trying to say is it helps you get new neurons, new wiring. Those rigid places in those deep ruts in your brain, it's going to create some new ones. If trauma is like wiping out your like internal GPS in those particular stories, story work is sitting down with someone who gently and kindly helps you trace your steps, where you have come from, remember from last week, and where you're going. And it helps create new neural pathways. This is why it's so important when we look at Hagar that Jesus asks these questions. Where have you come from? Where are you going? And these aren't just questions we're asking you. It's a story framework. It's a way that we begin to go, the fullness of my story is affecting the fullness of my present. So people go, well, I just think that, we just need to let the past be the past and take where we are today and move forward with Jesus. That's a great in theory, but you have neurons. You have a brain. That has dictated what you think and what you do. And so you will just end up beating yourself up with condemnation because you can't move forward, and you'll pray yourself crazy, and you will read the scriptures and you'll still go, why can't I be better? And it's because God is like, because I want you to connect with yourself and with me and with others to create and tell a more truer story, because the past isn't dead. The past is living right now in your present, but you're living in the past and aren't actually living in the present in some areas of your life. If you notice what God does with Hagar, he reorients her. He doesn't shame her. He doesn't avoid her past. And there's many stories in the Bible. Look at the woman at the well, many stories in the Bible. where he engages the story. The man with legions of demons. What's your name? What's going on with you? The woman the woman at the well, hey, this isn't just the fullness of your story. Here's your whole story, right? He names Hagar's pain and he gives her direction. He doesn't do that by mitigating or avoiding her past or where she's come from. He welcomes it. He brings it. He engages it so that she can live more present and have direction and know the next step. So that's a lot for today. Just to recap what we've talked about, your healthy brain, when your brain is functioning healthy, it operates in means-end analysis. It sees the preferred future. It has the ability to work backwards and forwards. It can see next steps. It works sequentially, right? But when trauma comes in your past and it dictates something of danger, past experiences that brought harm or hurt, it's reliving that in the present. The brain is overlapping, it's overlaying, and it's reliving those decisions in the present and keeping you stuck in fight or flight. It's just like, I just need to survive, so just forget it. I'm not going to step out and do that new venture. I'm not going to have that hard conversation. I'm not going to trust God fully because I just don't want to get hurt. And in doing so, it's killing hope. And this is where we introduce story, where we get to reconnect with the story that actually brought the harm. And when we visit it, when we tell the story more accurately, more particularly, and we're going to get more into how to do that and what that looks like, I just want to help you begin to understand that you aren't just lazy or weak or don't have enough faith, that there might be something more going on neurologically here, that God actually, because he made your good brain, wants to begin to help heal. So here's a couple reflection questions I want to offer to you as we end our time together. Where in your life do you feel stuck or directionless? Where in your life do you feel stuck or directionless? And take some time to think about it. Maybe it comes right away. Maybe you need some time. Maybe you need to pray, God, there are some places in me that I think I feel stuck. Maybe it's not in the direction of building a business or something, but maybe it's more around an emotional experience you're having. You're feeling really stuck in your anxiety. Where in your life do you feel stuck or directionless? Could it be, this is another question, could it be that your story holds the missing piece to your next step? Could it be? And if it is, could you ask yourself, is there a time that I can remember where I felt this same feeling I feel right now? Just be curious. You don't got to make means out of it. Just write it down. A story, a time, sit, reflect, invite God into that reflection and see what he has to say. And let me ask you this last question here. What if healing isn't about you rushing forward, but about gently reconnecting to where you've been? What if healing isn't about you rushing forward and creating that new business or going and having that conversation yet? What if it's about gently reconnecting with where you've been? That maybe there's something that needs to be shared, revealed, reflected upon, that the Holy Spirit wants to invite you into, to say, hey, where have you come from? Let's sit and talk for a little bit so that you can begin to get more curious about what God, what story, what invitation is being offered to you. Because here's what I know about God. He's least interested in having you kill it for the kingdom or, do some mighty thing. He wants to tend to the places of your heart that have gone unnamed and unchallenged by an enemy of your soul that need care where you needed care, that need healing where you needed healing. And he wants there to be integration in your brain. So next week, we're actually going to talk about the concept of implicit and explicit memory and how some of the things that you've forgotten still, like maybe it's a memory that you've forgotten, it still shapes so much of what you do, and why bringing those memories into the light really can change everything. It's a really important part of healing our brain. So this was a lot. I hope that you're tracking with me. We would love for you to engage more of the work that we do. So much of what we do at Freedom Movement is helping you begin to heal the past stories so that you can begin to live more integrated in shalom, and then ultimately help those that you love and lead through coaching, through parenting, through spousing, through friendships, to begin to heal in their stories and have the capacity to hold with more kindness and curiosity, maybe the stories that are shaping them, that are dictating their present, because they're still stuck in some of the past. So we really, really would love for you to come to any of the offerings that we have to help you gain more awareness and more understanding about what we do at Freedom Movement and about how we can help you heal. And a lot of what I'm talking about here, we teach you and help you apply in real time and in practice, because that's important. That's important. So thank you so much for being here today. I just want you guys to know that I will never ask you to do something that I have not done myself or asked myself to do, because as always, my friends, I am in it with you. We'll see you next week. We are so thankful for the talented Tanya Godsey offering her amazing music with us. You can find Tanya on Spotify and other streaming platforms. And as always, thank you for letting us share about the not so easy stories that make us and entering into the honesty and courage it takes to love who you were created to be. So until the next time, friends, may God's love and kindness be an offering to your heart, both now and always.